The blades of the helicopter sliced through the night sky, roaring above the dark stretch of forest beneath. Inside, laughter echoed, cruel, heartless laughter. Four men in tactical gear, faces hidden behind balaclavas, surrounded a young woman tied to a steel chair. Her wrists were bound tight, blood oozing from where the ropes had cut into her skin. Her hair, once neat, was plastered to her face from the sweat and wind. "You thought you could play hero, huh?" the leader sneered, his voice thick with arrogance. He was known as Kruger, a mercenary who prided himself on breaking people, especially those who stood up to him. The girl, despite her bruises, didn't plead. Her eyes were calm, icy, and strangely focused. "You don't know who you're messing with," she said quietly. Her voice was steady, too steady for someone facing death. The mercenaries burst into laughter again. "We know exactly who you are, sweetheart," Kruger said, leaning close. "Just a nosy American girl who thought she could snoop around our operation. Too bad for you, we don't do mercy." The helicopter tilted slightly as it crossed over a canyon. The men opened the side door, wind screaming through the cabin. Below, the darkness stretched endlessly, no sign of life. "Say goodbye, hero," Kruger mocked, gripping her chair. "Any last words?" The girl raised her head slowly, her bruised lip curling into the faintest smirk. "Yeah," she whispered, locking eyes with him. "You'll regret this." With a shove, Kruger and his men threw her out. The wind swallowed her scream as she plummeted through the night, the helicopter lights fading above her. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that the innocent girl they just threw out wasn't helpless at all. Her name was Lieutenant Avery Cole, a decorated U.S. Army airborne officer, trained in freefall combat and survival behind enemy lines. In that split second of freefall, instincts kicked in. Her fingers, though numb, reached down to the cord hidden inside her belt. With one sharp tug, a compact chute burst open from her vest, yanking her violently upward. She hit the ground hard but alive, rolling down the rocky slope until she came to rest beneath a cluster of trees. Pain radiated through her ribs, but she was breathing. Above, the helicopter disappeared into the distance, the men laughing, certain she was gone. As the night deepened, Avery crawled to her feet, wincing. She tore off the ropes from her wrists, each movement filled with fury. She looked up at the dark sky and whispered, "You just made the biggest mistake of your lives." With that, she turned toward the mountains, where she knew their base had to be. She wasn't just going to survive, she was going to finish what she started. The morning sun bled over the horizon as Avery trudged through the dense wilderness, her breath fogging in the crisp air. Every step hurt, but she refused to stop. Memories flashed, the mission briefing, the satellite photos, the orders from command. She had been sent to investigate an illegal arms syndicate operating under Kruger's leadership. What she hadn't expected was betrayal from within. Someone in her own unit had sold her location. Now, she was stranded behind enemy lines, unarmed, wounded, and hunted. But that only made her more dangerous. Hours later, she found a small stream and used it to clean her wounds. Her reflection stared back, dirt, blood, and eyes burning with resolve. "You're still in the fight," she muttered. She fashioned makeshift gear from the forest, a sharpened branch for defense, strips of her torn uniform to bind her ribs. Her training whispered through every move, silent, efficient, lethal. Then she spotted it, fresh boot prints. Kruger's men were on patrol. She followed them silently, her movements like a shadow. By afternoon, she reached a cliffside overlooking a hidden compound. Trucks, fuel barrels, weapons crates, it was their main hub. She crouched behind a boulder, scanning. Then she saw him, Kruger, barking orders. "Make sure no one finds the wreck," he growled to his lieutenant. "And if the Americans come sniffing, we move south immediately." Avery's lips curved into a grim smile. "Not moving anywhere, pal." As night fell, she slipped down toward the perimeter. She stole a knife from a sleeping guard, then a radio. Moving like a ghost, she disabled their generators one by one. The camp went pitch black. Panic erupted, flashlights darted, shouts echoed. She took advantage of the chaos, eliminating guards silently. When Kruger finally realized what was happening, half his men were already down. "Who's out there?" he yelled, firing into the darkness. A voice came through the static of his radio, her voice. "You should have tied the ropes tighter." His blood ran cold. Then, gunfire. Explosions. Avery had triggered the fuel tanks with flares she found in a supply crate. The compound lit up in flames. Kruger's men ran in every direction, but she moved through them like a phantom. One by one, they fell, each bullet deliberate, each strike precise. She was no longer prey. She was the hunter. By dawn, the compound was rubble. Only Kruger remained, cornered and bleeding. Avery stepped out of the smoke, rifle in hand, uniform torn but proud. "Who are you?" he gasped, trembling. She stepped closer, her eyes like steel. "Lieutenant Avery Cole," she said coldly. "U.S. Armed Forces, and you just assaulted an officer." Before he could react, she raised her weapon and fired once, ending it. The smoke cleared as Avery limped out of the burning compound. Her radio crackled, a faint voice on the other end. "Command to Eagle 1, do you copy?" Relief washed over her. She pressed the button. "Eagle 1 alive. Target neutralized." The voice stuttered, "Cole. We thought you were Kia. What happened out there?" Avery glanced back at the ruins. They underestimated the wrong soldier. As extraction teams arrived, she sat on the steps of a burned truck, watching the dawn light spill over the wreckage. But inside her, something didn't sit right. Kruger had mentioned a leak, someone in her own ranks had given him intel. This wasn't over. Hours later, she was debriefed at base. The general congratulated her survival, calling it a miracle of military skill. But when she asked who had fed Kruger her location, the room fell silent. "That information is classified," he said. Her jaw tightened. "It won't stay that way for long." That night, Avery received a private call from an encrypted line. "Lieutenant," said a familiar voice, the traitor's voice. "You were supposed to die out there. You made things complicated." She said nothing, letting the silence draw out. "You don't understand the bigger picture," the voice continued. "Walk away." Avery smiled grimly. "You called the wrong woman." She ended the call, already tracing the signal. Her next mission had begun. Weeks later, news headlines read, "Rogue Arms Ring dismantled in international operation, led by heroic female officer." The world saw her as a survivor. But she knew the truth, this was just one chapter of a much darker war. As she packed her duffel for the next assignment, she paused to look at her unit patch: freedom, honor, justice. Her fingers brushed it gently. For every girl they thought was weak, she whispered, "This one's for you." Then she turned toward the camera, her gaze fierce, unyielding. If you believe no one should ever underestimate strength, courage, or the power of justice, subscribe now. Because more stories like this are coming, and every one of them will make you believe in heroes again.